And I want to also give deep thanks and gratitude to Brett Dyer for securing this service. I was, to say the least, a bit concerned because I am not a Trekker or a Trekkie or whatever it is that people who really love this show is, but I am truly drawn to what I have learned from Brett in his passionate expressions of why this show was so important to him as a young man and a youth. And certainly, Star Trek is sacred to its fans. Like Star Wars, it becomes something of a religion in tying our lives together, which is what a religion is supposed to do. I love the characters as I have gotten to know them over the years. I am more cognizant of the movies than the original series, but I did learn so much from Brett about the effect that the show had on the 1970s. It was really in reruns by then. So you can picture latchkey children coming home to an empty house and spending most of their time home alone watching TV, especially Star Trek. Their minds and hearts were moved by the values and the models provided by the crew of the Enterprise. The progress of the Star Trek phenomenon, TV, movies, reboots, more than 50 years of cultural influence on both entertainment and technology, on dreams of space exploration, all affecting people's vision of a better way to live in the universe. There is real power that draws people to the messages of Gene Roddenberry. Now, Gene Roddenberry held controversial views about religion. He did not believe in any traditional God, nor did he attend a church regularly, although we do claim him as a Unitarian Universalist because he did darken the doors of our churches on occasion. David Alexander, one of the many writers about Gene Roddenberry, say, it was at Denver that someone wrote a question, "What is your religion?" asking Gene Roddenberry. Gene answered, "I do not belong to any church, but I do consider myself a religious man. I believe that I am a part of you, and you are a part of me. And we are all part of all life. Also a part of the creative force and intelligence behind life." Wow, a creative force and intelligence behind life. He goes on, "Therefore, if we are a part of God, then our lives are not brief, meaningless things, but rather have a great importance and significance, all of us and each of us." What a perfect description of our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Now, we do know that Roddenberry did darken the doors of UU churches in the LA area during his lifetime, but he did not regularly confirm any organized religion. He did offer an inspired vision of the future. The individual Star Trek shows, each one of them, those were morality plays that reflect that vision and have the capacity to shape our culture. Let us begin with a brief biography of Roddenberry, mostly from the Encyclopedia Britannica, adapted by me in recognition of language. Gene Roddenberry was born Eugene Wesley Roddenberry on August 19, 1921, in El Paso, Texas. He was an American writer and television and film producer who created and served as executive producer of the popular science fiction series Star Trek. 3 years of episodes from 1966 to 1969. And this show spawned other television series and a string of motion pictures. Roddenberry briefly attended Los Angeles City College, flew B-17 bombers during World War II, and was an airline pilot from 1945 to 1949, and later a sergeant on the Los Angeles Police Force from 1949 to 1953. He then became a freelance television writer and contributed scripts through 1962 to several network programs, including Dragnet, Highway Patrol, Dr. Kildare, and Have Gun Will Travel. In 1964, he began trying to sell the idea of Star Trek to producers, but not until September 8, 1966, did the first episode debut on the National Broadcasting Company. The series was repeatedly threatened with cancellation, but the program's ardent followers, known as Trekkies or Trekkers, formed fan clubs and initiated letter writing campaigns to keep the series alive until September 2nd, 1969. Star Trek chronicled the 23rd century adventures of a cast of characters headed by Captain James Kirk, Mr. Spock, and other officers of the Starship Enterprise. The 79 aired episodes of the series presented an optimistic view of life in the future as it traced the crew's mission to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before. Star Trek enjoyed astonishing success in syndication. That was the reruns of which we spoke earlier, and eventually spawned an animation series from 1973 to 1975, a series of theatrical films, and numerous spin-off television series, including one right now featuring Patrick Stewart as Jean-Luc Picard. Roddenberry was a producer on the first film based on the original series, Star Trek, the motion picture, that was released in 1979. It was followed by 12 more Star Trek motion pictures, with Roddenberry serving as executive consultant on the first 3. My favorite is the fourth, which was written and directed by Leonard Nimoy. It featured cetaceans, whales, porpoises. Oh, captured my heart. Roddenberry was also executive producer from 1987 to 1991 of the sequel television series Star Trek: The Next Generation. In addition, he wrote Star Trek: The Motion Picture, a novel, which was published in 1979. Roddenberry was a very interesting man. He was known to drink a lot and take drugs and womanize. However, the values he put forward in the Star Trek series have reached so many people with positive results. Roddenberry died October 24th, 1991, in Santa Monica, California. Now, at the heart of our understanding of Star Trek is the basic premise of Star Trek. It takes place, as I said, in the 23rd century, but we need to know that it takes place after a global war Once aliens visited the Earth, human beings, seeing how petty their squabbles were in the face of the challenges from afar, created an idyllic Earth society without hunger, wars, conflict, money, or need. May the pandemic help us do that. All humans are viewed as equal to one another. Human beings are free to explore the universe and work toward the betterment of humanity and the universe, giving their evolution post-global war. How was that vision made manifest? Roddenberry made a vision that is certainly aspirational and inspirational and put it on TV screens throughout the country. What a blessing, not only to the United States, but to the world, where the shows are still showing. Consider the crew on the bridge of the Enterprise. It was so challenging to the United States at that time. Consider at the center of the bridge a beautiful Black woman, Uhura. They often depended on her skills to get out of predicaments. She was needed and she was never silenced. Nichelle Nichols, who played Uhura, once spoke to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and during the conversation, Dr. King insisted to her that she continue with the show as an example of a smart, successful Black woman on the TV screen every week. What a gift. And there, then we think of Sulu, an Asian actor who is not a caricature and served as the helmsman on the bridge. While not out as gay on the show, hiring a gay Asian American as an actor who was not a martial artist or a waiter was groundbreaking and brought us the amazing George Takei, who still influences our world in so many wonderful ways. And then there's Chekhov. Now, this is the middle of the Cold War when these shows were being seen on TV. Imagine a Russian character contributing to the stories during the middle of the Cold War. And of course, a favorite of so many people, Mr. Spock, a supposedly non-emotional alien played by Jewish actor Leonard Nimoy. Spock was present in the stories to critique, to provide reasonable thought and balance for the emotional human starship captain, James Kirk. Well played by William Shatner. Until Star Trek, the science fiction on TV and in movies portrayed only white male crews on spaceships, and if women were on screen, they were usually in need of rescue. Think of it. This show made room for Sigourney Weaver in Alien and Aliens. So there's a paradox of Star Trek. According to Roddenberry, on Earth in the 23rd century, after that global war, all human problems were resolved on our planet. So the crew dealt with the problems that existed on Earth in the 1960s through their exposure and experiences with other planets' cultures. It was the other planets that struggled with racial issues. A special example is in the episode, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, which portrays a very angry man whose body is one half black on his left side and one half white on his right side. And that man is racing to find and capture a man whose color scheme is the exact opposite. He is already convinced that this person, because he is not of the same color scheme, cannot possibly have integrity. And that reflects, unfortunately, human behaviors about every racial identification and the expectation that the opposite of who I am has to be less than me. And a problem. Kirk tries to find a way for them to understand that people should not use force or violence to settle conflict. That's a difficult sell. Roddenberry also addresses overpopulation, the consequences of ongoing wars, and so many other issues current to both the 1960s and today. I tried to incorporate more examples and found that the sermon would last until Tuesday, maybe, I think. Now, the crew on the Enterprise also had to grapple with the prime directive of the Federation of Planets, which they represented. And that prime directive was that no space crew could interfere with the culture of another planet. This is kind of a high ideal held up in many other science fiction stories, and we could see it and remind ourselves of it elsewhere. The premise was that cultures and societies in other worlds had to evolve and develop their own cultures without the influence of the heroes of the show. It echoes the resistance of the 1960s to dealing with Black people being beaten and lynched. Oh, we can't interfere. Women being objectified and abused in the workplace. Don't rock the boat with too much change. Still today, we face racism, sexism, ageism, ableism, pick your ism. Sexual abuse is still written off. Oh, he was just a college kid and his whole life was ahead of him. How can we trash that? Wow. Wow. What was the crew of the Enterprise to do when faced with situations on other planets outside the Federation that did not mirror their ideals, the deeper ideals that they had for the value of every life form? Well, they broke the prime directive all the time. It was a great way to teach the values. And why did they break the prime directive? Because it was the right thing to do. The greater good required it. And this is where the values of Unitarian Universalism provide a vision for a better universe that we could carry if we even had it in our own country. And we claim to carry out into the world sometimes. To bring it into the rest of the universe, wherever the Star Trek missions took them, they were willing to break a big rule to try to bring better change. Roddenberry notes it is important to the typical Star Trek fan that there is a tomorrow. They pretty much share the Star Trek philosophies about life. The fact that it is wrong to interfere with the evolvement of other peoples. That to be different is not necessarily to be wrong or to be ugly. That's important to know. So let's consider how Roddenberry spoke of his own perspective on the future. when we think about how do we boldly go. He wrote, reality is incredibly larger, infinitely more exciting than the flesh and blood vehicle we travel in here. If you read science fiction, the more you read it, the more you realize that you and the universe are part of the same thing. He goes on to say, science knows still practically nothing about the real nature of matter, energy, dimension, or time. I like that humility. And he goes on, and even less about those remarkable things called life and thought. Wow. And even less about those remarkable things about life and thought. But whatever the meaning and purpose of the universe, you, each one of you, are a legitimate part of it. And since you are part of all that is, part of its purpose, there is more to you than just this brief speck of existence. You are just a visitor here in this time and this place, a traveler through it. But there is more to you than just this brief speck of existence. To me, this echoes our UU values and aspirations and reminds us that we not only should have values and aspirations, but we are called by those values and aspirations to move out into the world to make it a better place for the greater good of all. The vision provided in John Legend's Imagine is often seen as unrealistic. Yet without such a vision of who we are and how we are called to be in the world, how may we boldly change the most egregious problems we face in our world today? We need to hold fast to the greater good for all, to live as if we recognize the inherent worth and dignity of every person, to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion for all, and move forward together with mutual love and respect. And for me, this is the reason for Unitarian Universalist congregations, that we may be together to support our individual visions and to encourage us to join our visions, to bring them out into our world with respect, with responsibility, and with relish for the process. Amen. Amen. So be it. Blessed be.